Good day, my darlings. So, as you may know, the last time I tried to read to you all, unfortunately there were some issues regarding to the sound of my voice, and thus I promised that I would re-record the few stories that I had read with the hopefully better audio. I thank you so much for your patience as I get this going. But without further ado, here is the rereading of the Witches and Fairy Doctors. Witches and fairy doctors receive their power from opposite dynasties. The witch from evil spirits and her own malignant will. The fairy doctor from the fairies, and is something, a temperament that is born within him or her. The first is always feared and hated. The second is gone to for advice, and is never worse than mischievous. The most celebrated fairy doctors are sometimes people the fairies loved and carried away, and kept with them for 7 years. They may merely grow silent and strange. Not that those the fairies loved are always carried off. They may merely grow silent and strange, and take to lonely wanderings in the gentle places. Such will, in the after times, be great poets or musicians, or fairy doctors. They must not be confused with those who have a lian xi, for the lian xi lives upon the vitals of its chosen, and they waste and die. She is of the dreadful solitary fairies. To her have belonged the greatest of the Irish poets, from Ossian down to the last century. Those we speak of have for their friends the troping fairies, the gay and sociable populace of raths and caves. Great is their knowledge of herbs and spices. These doctors, when the butter will not come on the milk, or the milk will not come from the cow, will be sent for to find out if the cause be in the course of common nature, or if there has been witchcraft. Perhaps some old hag, in the shape of a hare, has been milking the cattle. Perhaps some user of the dead hand has drawn away the butter to her own churn. Whatever it be, there is the counter-charm. They will give advice, too, in cases of suspected changelings, and prescribe for the fairy blast. When the fairy strikes any one, a tumor rises, or they become paralyzed. This is called a fairy blast, or fairy stroke. The fairies are, of course, visible to them, and many a new-built house have they bid the owner pull down because it lays on the fairies' road. Lady Wilde thus describes one who lived in Innis, Sark. He never touched beer, spirits, or meat in all his life, but has lived entirely on bread, fruits, and vegetables. A man who knew him thus described him. Winter and summer his dress is the same, merely a flannel shirt and coat. He will pay his share at a feast, but neither eats nor drinks of the food and drink set before him. He speaks no English, and never could be made to learn the English tongue, though he says it might be used with great effect to curse one's enemy. He holds a burial ground sacred, and would not carry away so much as a leaf of ivy from a grave. And he maintains that the people are right to keep to their ancient usages, such as never to dig a grave on Monday, and to carry the coffin 3 times round the grave, following the course of the sun, and then the dead rest in peace. Like the people also, he holds suicides accursed, for they believe that all its dead turn over in their faces if such a death is laid amongst them. Though well off, he never, even in his youth, thought of taking a wife, nor has he ever known to love a woman. He stands quite apart from life, and by this means holds his power over the mysteries. No money will tempt him to impart his knowledge to another, for if he did, he would be struck dead. So he believes. He would not touch a hazel stick, but carries an ash wand, which he holds in his hands when he prays, laid across his knees, and the whole of his life is devoted to works of grace and charity. And though now an old man, he has never had a day's sickness. No one has ever seen him in a rage, nor heard an angry word from his lips but once, and then under great irritation. He recited the Lord's Prayer backwards, as an imprecation on his enemy. Before his death he will reveal the mystery of his power, but not till the hand of death is on him for certain. When he does reveal it, we may be sure that it will be to one person only, his successor. There are several such doctors in County Sligo, really well up in herbal medicine by all accounts, and my friends find them in their own counties. All these things go on merrily, The spirit of the age laughs in vain, and is itself only a ripple to pass, or already passing away. The spells of the witch are altogether different. They smell of the grave. One of the most powerful is the charm of the dead hand. With a hand cut from a corpse, they, muttering words of power, will stir a well and skim from its surface a neighbor's butter. A candle held between the fingers of the dead hand can never be blown out. It is useful to robbers, but they appeal for the suffrage of the lovers otherwise, for they can make love potions by drying and grinding into powder the liver of a black cat, mixed with tea and poured from a black teapot. It is infallible. There are many stories of its successes in quite recent years, but unhappily the spell must be continually renewed, or all the love may turn to hate. But the central notion of witchcraft everywhere is the power to change into some fictitious form. Usually in Ireland, a hare or a cat. Long ago, a wolf was the favorite. Before Giraldus Cambrinus came to Ireland, a monk wandering in the forest at night came upon two wolves, one of whom was dying. The other entreated him to give the dying wolf the last sacrament. He said the Mass and paused when he came to Viaticum. The other, on seeing this, tore the skin from the breast of the dying wolf, laying bare the form of an old woman. Thereon the monk gave the sacrament. Years afterwards he confessed the matter, and when Giraldus visited the country, was being tried by the synod of the bishops. To give the sacrament to an animal was a great sin. Was it a human being or an animal? On the advice of Giraldus, they sent the monks, with papers describing the matter, to the Pope for his decision. The result was not stated. Giraldus himself was of the opinion that the wolf form was an illusion, for, as he argued, only God can change the form. His opinion coincided with tradition, Irish or otherwise. It is the notion of many who have written about these things that magic is mainly the making of illusions. Patrick Kennedy tells a story of a girl who, having in her hand a sod of grass containing, unbeknownst to herself, a four-leaved shamrock, watched a conjurer at a fair. Now, the four-leaved shamrock guards its owner from all spells, and when the others were staring at a cock carrying along the roof of a shed a huge beam in its bill. She asked them what they found to wonder at in a cock with a straw. The conjurer begged her for the sod of grass to give his horse, he said. Immediately she cried out in terror that the beam would fall and kill somebody. This, then, is to be remembered. The form of an enchanted thing is fiction and caprice. Our first story is actually a small poem attributed to William Allingham called The Witch Bride. A fair witch crept to a young man's side, and he kissed her and took her for his bride. But a shape came in the dead of night, and filled the room with snowy light. And he saw how in his arms there lay a thing more frightful than mouth may say. And he rose in haste and followed the shape, till morning crowned an eastern cape. And he girded himself and followed still, when sunset sainted the western hill. But, mocking and thwarting, clung to his side, weary day, the foul witch bride. Our next story is called The Fairy Cure, and it is attributed to Patrick Kennedy. For nearly a year before the time of this tale, Nora's daughter, Judy, had been confined to her bed by a sore leg, whether which neither she nor the neighboring doctor, nor the ferryman, the worthy who possessed skill in curing all maladies inflicted by the good people, could make any hand of. The calling up of the old woman, the ride behind Virdoctra, and the dismounting at the door of an illuminated palace, all took place as mentioned in the tale above alluded to. In the hall she was surprised to see an old neighbor who had long been spirited away from the haunts of his youth and manhood to the joyless, though showy, life of the sea caverns. He at once took an opportunity, when the dark man was not observing him, to impress on Nora the necessity of taking no refreshment of any kind while under the roof of the fairy castle, and of refusing money or any other consideration in any form. The only exception he made was in favor of cures for diseases inflicted by evil spirits or the fairies. She found the lady of the castle in a bed with pillows and quilts of silk, and in a short time, for Nora was a handy woman, there was a beautiful little girl lying on the breast of the delighted mother. All the fine ladies that were scattered through the large room now gathered round and congratulated their queen, and paid many compliments to the lucky-handed Nora. "I'm so pleased with you," said the lady, that I shall be glad to see you take as much gold and silver and jewels out of the next room as you can carry. Nora stepped in out of curiosity and saw piles of gold and silver coins and baskets of diamonds and pearls lying about on every side, but she remembered the caution and came out empty-handed. "I'm very much obliged to you, my lady," she said, "but if I took them guineas and crowns and jewels home, no one would ever call on me again to help his wife, and I'd be sitting with my hands across and doing nothing but drinking tea and making courtesies, and I'd be dead before a year had gone by." "Oh dear," said the lady, "what an odd person you are. At any rate, sit down at the table and help yourself to food and drink. Oh, ma'am, is it them jellies and custards and pastries you'd like to see me at? Lord love you, I wouldn't know the way to my mouth with the likes, and I swore against drinking after the time I was overtaken with the liquor, when I ought to be minding a poor neighbor's wife. Well, this is too bad. Will you even consent to wear this shawl for my sake? Ah, me lady, would you have the dirty little Gorsons roaring after me, and maybe pelting me with stones when I'd be going through the village? Well, but what should hinder you from living in the castle all your life with me, eating and drinking, and wearing the best of everything? Musha, ma'am, I'd only be the laughing-stock of the fine ladies and gentlemen. I'd have no wood neighbor to have a gossip with, and what would the creatures of women do for me in my own place when their time would come? Alas, alas! Is there any way in which I can show you how grateful I am for your help and your skill? Musha, indeed there is, ma'am. My poor Gershak Jude is lying under with a sore leg for a 12-month, and I'm sure that the Lord, or yourself, can make her sound as a bell, if you only say the word. Ask me anything but that, and you shall have it. Oh, lady dear, that's giving me everything but the thing I want. You don't know the offense your daughter gave us, I am sure, or you would not ask me to cure her." "Judy offended you, ma'am? Oh, it's impossible." "Not at all, and this is the way it happened. You know that all the fairy court enjoy their lives in the night only, and we frequently go throughout the country and hold our feasts where the kitchen, especially the hearth, is swept and clean. About 12 months ago, myself and my ladies were passing your cabin, and one of the company liked the appearance of the neat thatch, and the whitewashed walls, and the clean pavement outside the door, so much that she persuaded us all to go in. We found the cheerful turf fire shining on the well-swept hearth and floor, and the clean pewter and deft plates on the dresser, and the white table. We were so well pleased, and we sat down on the hearth and laid our tea tray, and began to drink our tea as comfortably as could be. You know we can be any size we please, and there was a score of us settled before the fire. We were vexed enough when we saw your daughter come up out of your bedroom and make towards the fire. Her feet, I acknowledge, were white and clean, but one of them could cover 2 or 3 of us, the size we were that night. On she came stalking, and just as I was raising my cup of tea to my lips, down came the soft flat sole on it, and spilled the tea all over me. I was very much annoyed, and I caught the thing that came next to my hand and hurled it at her. It was the teapot, and the point of the spout is in the small of her leg from that night till now. Oh, Lady Darlant, how can you hold spite to the poor slob of a girl that knew no more of you being there, nor of offending you, than she did the night she was born? Well, well, now that it is all past and gone, I believe you are right. At all events, you have done so much for me that I cannot refuse you anything. Take this ointment and rub it where you'll see the purple mark, and I hope that your thoughts of me may be pleasant. Just then a messenger came to say that the Lord was at the hall door, waiting for Nora, and the cocks would soon be a-crowing. So she took her leave of the lady and mounted behind the dark man. The horse's back seemed as hard and as thin as a hazel stick, but it bore her safely to home. She was in a sleepy state all the time she was returning, but at last she woke up and found herself standing by her own door. She got into bed as fast as she could, and when she woke the next morning, she fancied it was all a dream. She put her hand in her pocket, and there, for a certainty, was the box of ointment. She stripped the clothes off her daughter's leg, rubbing some of the stuff on it, and in a few seconds she saw the skin bursting, and a tiny spout of a teapot working itself out. Poor Judy was awake by this, and wondering what ease she felt in her leg. I warrant she was rejoiced at the story her mother told her. She soon received health and strength, and never neglected to leave her kitchen so nice when she was going to bed, that rich Damer himself might eat his dinner off the floor. She took good care never to let her feet stray over it again after bedtime, for fear of giving offense to her unseen visitors. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you like what you saw here, I ask that you leave a like, comment, subscribe, and until we next meet, my dears, I do hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And until then, ta-ta and farewell.